Good morning, evening, or night, wherever you are. Welcome to WHAM Today. Take a deep breath, clear your mind, and let's drift through the whispers of today's world, one quiet thought at a time. As we wrap up Monday, 7th April 2025, let's see what stories are unfolding around us. United States, President Donald Trump's administration faces scrutiny as Attorney General Pam Bondi expressed doubt about a potential third term, suggesting Trump will likely be finished by January 20th, 2029. The administration's sweeping tariffs, a universal 10% levy against nearly all countries, have triggered widespread criticism and fears of a global recession, causing stock indices to tumble and crude oil prices to fall by about 15%. Senior administration officials gave conflicting messages on the tariffs, causing confusion. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent attended a White House meeting where Trump's team defended tariffs. Administration officials say more than 50 countries targeted by President Donald Trump's new tariffs have reached out to begin negotiations over the sweeping import taxes. Trump defends the tariffs, calling them medicine as he seeks to renegotiate trade deals with other nations. Jaguar Land Rover Automotive said it was pausing U.S. shipments due to Trump's tariffs. Domestically, thousands protested on the National Mall and at hands-off rallies. Speaker Mike Johnson and Florida GOP Rep. Anna Paulina Luna say they have cut a deal to end the fight over proxy voting for new parents. The administration's FEMA funding freeze violated a court order. The U.S. is also grappling with a measles outbreak, with a second child dying from measles-related causes in West Texas, where cases are nearing 500. And the U.S. has more than double the number of measles cases it saw in all of 2024. Severe storms in the U.S. South and Midwest have left at least 18 people dead, with rising rivers and flooding worsening the situation. Colorado removed the official portrait of Trump from display in the state's Capitol building last month after the president complained that it was deliberately unflattering. Turning to Yemen, the Houthis say, U.S. strikes killed 6 as Trump's bombing video suggests a higher overall death toll. Trump posted a video to his social media accounts of a U.S. strike on Yemen. The strikes targeting the capital hit a home and wound more than 20 other people, according to Houthi authorities. Meanwhile, Vietnam has urged the United States to delay imposing tariffs. Lam, Vietnam's top leader, was one of the first world leaders to reach out to President Trump after details of the new tariffs were announced. In Cambodia, independent media outlets are facing extinction due to an executive directive from President Trump. In Israel, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu believes that the first term of the Trump administration was a boon for Israel, and both leaders are using similar playbooks as they face turmoil. Regarding El Salvador, a Department of Justice lawyer, Erez Ruveni, was placed on leave by the Trump administration for allegedly failing to vigorously defend the erroneous deportation of Kilmar Abrego Garcia, a Salvadoran immigrant, to El Salvador. Over in China, a 52-year-old Chinese woman died by suicide while detained by US Border Patrol in Arizona for overstaying her visitor visa. Even small territories like Tokelau, a non-self-governing territory of New Zealand with a population of about 1,500 people, have received a 10% tariff. Across the Pacific, one of Fiji's largest kava farmers, to export to the U.S., says the Trump administration's tariffs means Americans are going to end up paying the additional cost. Finally, the European Union's retaliatory tariffs will target us products, including meat, wine, clothing, chewing gum, vacuum cleaners, and toilet paper. Ukraine continues to face intense Russian military pressure, with recent missile and drone strikes causing casualties and infrastructure damage. Kyiv's mayor Vitaly Klitschko reported at least one death in the capital due to a Russian missile strike, with paramedics responding to incidents in 2 districts. The Ukrainian Air Force noted missile activity in the Chernihiv region. Russian forces claimed the capture of Basivka in the Sumy region and are actively engaged in attacks on Ukrainian forces in several other locations. The aftermath of Friday's strike on Kryvyi Rih continues to unfold. Concerns about the safety of the occupied Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant persist, with Energoatom CEO Petro Kotin citing issues with cooling water and staffing, estimating a 2-year time frame in peacetime to regain control safely. Calls are growing for the release of thousands of Ukrainian civilians detained by Russia, facing various charges. Despite U.S.-led ceasefire negotiations and reported dissatisfaction from U.S. President Donald Trump toward Vladimir Putin, Russia has stated it cannot accept the U.S. ceasefire proposal. Meanwhile, in Russia, Kirill Dmitriev's White House meetings with U.S. officials have gone largely unnoticed amidst the conflict, especially given the absence of any ceasefire agreement. China is preparing for a drawn-out trade conflict with the United States, potentially utilizing rate cuts and fiscal stimulus, according to a Communist Party commentary, as Goldman Sachs lowered its 2025 growth forecast for Chinese stocks to 10% from 16%, citing the impact of US tariffs. Betelnut sellers in Hainan are facing difficulties due to a weakening economy, despite the stimulant's historical popularity. Chinese scientists have developed a hyper-realistic virtual Shanghai for police training. A study has warned of a rising risk of magnitude 8 earthquakes in China and nearby regions. The Shandong, China's aircraft carrier, seemingly passed through the Philippines' narrower waterways instead of the Bashi Channel, according to military experts. Police are investigating the suspected hit-and-run death of a rare snow leopard in Qinghai province, where the animal was found dead on a highway with bloody tire marks nearby. Following China, G7 diplomats have jointly condemned China's military drills around Taiwan, deeming them destabilizing and a threat to global security and prosperity, while advocating a peaceful resolution of cross-strait issues. Shifting focus to Cambodia, Chinese upgrades to Cambodia's Ream naval base intend to diversify regional maritime access, including the establishment of a joint training center and the construction of a carrier-ready pier, according to observers. In Myanmar, a recent earthquake has been recorded. In France, Marine Le Pen, convicted of embezzling European Parliament funds, addressed supporters in Paris. She vowed to fight what she called a political, not a judicial ruling that could bar her from the next presidential election. Le Pen characterized the court's decision as a threat to democracy. Her supporters rallied following her conviction, signaling a defiant challenge to French institutions. Separately, French President Macron met with Egyptian President Sisi in Cairo for Gaza talks. They will hold a summit with Jordan's King Abdullah II as Israel renews its offensive against Hamas in Gaza. Moreover, in northern France, a 19-year-old suspect with ties to Islamic State was arrested for allegedly planning an attack on a public place. Israel-Palestine is seeing increased scrutiny as a war crimes complaint is being prepared for submission to the Met Police regarding the actions of 10 Britons who served with the Israeli military in Gaza. The 240-page dossier, compiled by human rights lawyer Michael Mansfield, D.C., alleges targeted killings of civilians and aid workers, as well as indiscriminate attacks on civilian areas, including hospitals. Tensions remain high in the West Bank, where a 14-year-old Palestinian teenager with a citizenship, Omar Mohammed Rabea, was killed in the town of Termis Aya. Palestinian officials have blamed an Israeli settler for the killing, while the Israeli military initially claimed it shot a terrorist allegedly throwing rocks, but later retracted this explanation. The Israeli military has also retracted its initial explanation regarding the killing of 15 Palestinian medics in Gaza after video footage contradicted claims that their vehicles lacked emergency signals. The military had originally stated they opened fire, because the vehicles were advancing suspiciously without headlights or emergency signals. Recent Israeli strikes on the Gaza Strip have resulted in the deaths of at least 32 people, including over a dozen women and children, according to Palestinian health officials. In response, approximately 10 projectiles were fired from Hamas at Israeli cities, with most being successfully intercepted by the Israeli military. Meanwhile, UK Foreign Secretary David Lammy has criticized Israeli authorities for denying entry and deporting 2 Labour MPs, Yuan Yang, Early and Woodley, and Abtism Mohammed, Sheffield Central, who were visiting humanitarian aid projects in the West Bank. The Israeli Immigration Ministry justified the action by claiming the MPs planned to document the activities of security forces and spread anti-Israel hatred. Amidst global affairs, the Vatican saw Pope Francis making his first public appearance following his recent hospital discharge. He attended a special Jubilee Mass in St. Peter's Square. The Mass honored the sick and healthcare workers. He arrived in a wheelchair. The crowd included healthcare workers from around the world. They were initially told he would watch on television. This marked his return since March 23rd. He had been treated for pneumonia for over 5 weeks. United Kingdom. To commemorate its 200th anniversary and the reopening of the Sainsbury Wing, London's National Gallery is conducting a prize draw for a luxurious overnight stay inside its exhibition rooms. In Northern Ireland, a select committee report exposed critical underfunding in public services such as hospitals, schools, and the police, creating a crisis. Hospital waiting lists are critically long, and mental health needs exceed other regions by 40%. The Silvertown Tunnel, a multi-billion-pound road tunnel under the River Thames in East London, is opening Monday, though critics like Victoria Rance claim it's 1970s. Technology will cause lasting pollution. The Scottish government convened an emergency meeting regarding a wildfire that began in Galloway and spread to East Ayrshire, requiring evacuations. Prime Minister Keir Starmer pledged government support for key British industries facing economic challenges from Donald Trump's global tariffs, offering car makers more flexibility in electric vehicle transition targets. The Labour Party suspended a lawmaker after his arrest, linked to allegations of rape and child sex offences. The global economy reels as Asian markets tumble, with Japan's Nikkei 225 index falling almost 9% due to the ripple effects of U.S. President Donald Trump's tariff increases and the retaliatory measures from Beijing. This downturn mirrored a prior sharp decline on Wall Street, also spurred by the tariff implementations. President Trump maintains that these broad tariffs are essential for restructuring trade agreements with various countries. Shifting geopolitical landscapes are under scrutiny as former South Korean foreign minister and UN diplomat Ms. Kang suggests that evolving U.S. policies concerning Ukraine, Gaza, and Taiwan will fundamentally reshape the world order. Ms. Kang further asserts that the 21st century will continue to be characterized by the rise of Asia, highlighting the crucial role of robust relations between India and China in shaping this future. New Zealand's transport agency will close the Gulf RD roundabout in Mount Maunganui for resurfacing, citing safety concerns and the need for specialized equipment. Meanwhile, the government has committed $12 billion to bolster its defense capabilities. This investment includes upgrades to the Air Force with new 757 aircraft and a modernized helicopter fleet. The defense budget also aims to enhance the nation's strike capabilities. In economic news, building consents totaling $70 have been approved for various development projects over the last year. A Lucky Mangawai resident celebrated a $1 million, but plans to invest in a new car and seek professional financial advice. On the crime front, police are investigating a report of an individual allegedly possessing a firearm. Furthermore, 2 stores in Napier were targeted by perfume thieves who were caught on security and personal cameras. The United States under the Trump administration and spearheaded by Secretary of State Marco Rubio, is taking a firm stance on immigration. This involves the revocation of visas for South Sudanese passport holders. The action stems from the transitional government of South Sudan's perceived lack of cooperation in accepting its repatriated citizens within a reasonable time frame. Japan mourns the loss of 3 lives after a medical transport helicopter crashed into the sea. An 86-year-old female patient, a doctor in his 30s, and a patient caretaker in his 60s perished in the accident, while 3 others were rescued. Authorities have launched an investigation to determine the cause of the crash. Meanwhile, on the racetrack, Max Verstappen celebrated his first win of the 25 season at the Japanese Grand Prix, tightening the championship race. Innovation is also on the rise as a Japanese startup prepares to launch a stair-climbing electric wheelchair in 2026, promising greater accessibility. In other news, law enforcement in Kawasaki, Kanagawa Prefecture, arrested a 27-year-old man accused of groping a 25-year-old woman on a train. Turkey is currently grappling with significant anti-government protests. These demonstrations stem from worries about President Recep Tayyip Erdogan's increasingly authoritarian governance and the erosion of secular and democratic principles. The imprisonment of Mayor Ekrem İmamoğlu, a prominent opponent of President Erdogan, has further ignited public anger. The opposition seeks to amplify these protests, aiming for them to become the largest in Turkey's history. Özgür Özel, the re-elected CHP party chairman, has called upon President Erdogan to hold early elections amidst the ongoing turmoil. Protesters are uniting, setting aside their differences in response to the government's crackdown. Australia's Labour Party leader, Albanese, emphasised the social responsibility of social media companies, though specifics regarding potential platform bans remain unclear. A recent Newspoll survey in Houthis Australian indicated a rise in support for the centre-left Labour Party to 52% on a 2-party preferred basis. Ironically, Australia's S&P/S 200 benchmark index suffered a steep decline, falling over 6% to under 7,200 points, marking its lowest level since late 2023, amid concerns of a potential global recession and trade war. South Korea's cabinet will decide the date for the presidential election on June 3rd. This is required by law after a president's removal or death. The election must occur within 60 days. The cabinet must also declare a national holiday for voting. Tragically, a pilot died in a helicopter crash during a fire in southeastern South Korea. Meanwhile, the TV show Under 15 is under fire. It showcases children aiming to be K-pop stars. Critics say it pushes them to mimic mature performances. Canada's political landscape is witnessing a dynamic shift, as recent polls suggest a resurgence for the Liberal Party under Justin Trudeau, challenging the previously dominant lead held by Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre. This shift comes amidst growing concerns over President Trump's threat to annex Canada. Separately, tensions flared in Ottawa when Canadian police apprehended a man following an extensive lockdown on Parliament Hill, triggered by his barricading himself within the east block of the Parliament building. Germany observed the 80th anniversary of the liberation of Buchenwald, a Nazi concentration camp, with the former president cautioning against the rise of the far right. German Finance Minister Jörg Houthis expressed concerns about the potential substantial adverse impact of new U.S. tariffs, stating that Germany seeks partnership-kind negotiations with Washington. Amidst this, Bosnian Serbs declared German Secretary of State for European Affairs, Anna Luhrmann, persona non grata, following German sanctions against the Bosnian Serb leadership. European Union. The EU is preparing countermeasures to protect European interests and businesses amid possible tariff negotiation failures with the United States. France has suggested halting new US investments should negotiations collapse. Simultaneously, the EU is investing billions in Central Asia. This investment aims to diversify supply chains, reduce dependence on China, boost local industries, and encourage sustainable mining. European security officials are blaming Russia for a string of parcel fires. They describe these fires as part of a hybrid war aimed at destabilizing countries backing Ukraine. Myanmar is grappling with the aftermath of a catastrophic earthquake that has claimed the lives of 3,471 people. Over 200 individuals remain missing amidst the devastation. The United Nations has warned of an impending week of rainfall, which will likely worsen conditions for survivors who desperately need food, water, and shelter. Compounding the crisis, social media platforms are rife with AI-generated videos, misleading images, and baseless theories surrounding the earthquake's impact. India recently saw Prime Minister Narendra Modi visit Sri Lanka, solidifying ties with new defense and energy agreements. Public anger flared after a Lamborghini accident severely injured 2 construction workers. The driver's release on a mere $300 bail sparked accusations of a 2-tiered justice system. Meanwhile, the surging popularity of betting apps and fantasy games in India is causing worry over potential addiction and financial vulnerabilities among users. Bangladesh is currently holding 70 lawyers aligned with the Awami League, the party of former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. Hasina had previously sought refuge in India following a student-led uprising in 2024. The detained lawyers are accused of assault and attempted murder. These charges stem from protests and retaliatory violence last year that caused approximately 1,400 fatalities. A total of 144 lawyers are implicated in these cases. Taiwan is actively pursuing a zero-tariff trade agreement with the United States, its key ally and main arms supplier, even without official diplomatic relations. Amidst ongoing large-scale military drills by mainland China's People's Liberation Army, PLA, Taiwan fears these exercises could turn into an actual assault, giving the island little time to react. As a result, Taiwan's military has been directed to remain on high alert. Moreover, Taiwan has committed to boosting its investment. Syria is now estimated to possess over 100 chemical weapons sites. Inspectors believe these sites contain sarin, chlorine, and mustard gas. Concerns are growing about the security of these stockpiles. President Sharaa will visit Turkey and the UAE next week. He previously visited Turkey in February and Saudi Arabia in January. These are his first foreign travels since assuming the presidency. El Salvador finds itself at the center of a legal battle as a U.S. federal judge has again mandated the return of Kilmar Abrigo Garcia. Garcia, a Maryland resident, was deported to a prison in El Salvador known for its harsh conditions. The court deemed his deportation wholly lawless, citing a lack of substantial evidence linking Garcia to the MS-13 gang, the alleged reason for his removal. Papua New Guinea is facing a horrific situation as reported by the I-Post Courier, where a mother of 4 from Lundal in Ambon, Enga Province, was brutally tortured and burned alive. Turning to Bougainville, the president has strongly denounced a recently created AI-generated video. The video falsely portrays an altercation between himself and the Prime Minister of Papua New Guinea. He voiced serious concerns about the potential negative impact such AI misuse could have on Bougainville's ongoing efforts to achieve independence. In Iran, Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi dismissed direct negotiations with the U.S. as pointless. He cited ongoing threats of force and inconsistent stances from American officials. Despite this, Iran remains receptive to indirect discussions with the U.S., potentially facilitated by Oman. Brazil is currently witnessing a trial against former President Jair Bolsonaro. He is accused of plotting a coup. A conviction could lead to a significant prison term. Demonstrations supporting Bolsonaro occurred in Sao Paulo. Protesters are calling for an amnesty law. This law could protect him from criminal prosecution. Philippines islanders in Siargao, once involved in illegal fishing and mangrove deforestation, are now replanting mangroves and running ecotours. Sara Duterte has returned to the Philippines from The Hague. Her return fuels anticipation of a potential clash in the upcoming midterm elections. This also coincides with her father, Rodrigo Duterte's detention at the International Criminal Court, ICC. Vietnam is actively engaging with the United States to negotiate a reduction in newly imposed tariffs. To Lam, Vietnam's top leader, has directly appealed to President Trump, urging a delay in the implementation of these tariffs to lessen their potential economic impact on Vietnam. Sri Lanka is seeing strengthened ties with India. This is evidenced by the joint inauguration of the upgraded Maho-Hamanthai railway line and signaling system. This project was funded by India. It aims to improve connectivity within Sri Lanka. The project reaffirms Sri Lanka's importance in India's neighborhood first policy, according to Disanayake's office. Indonesia faces an impending tariff imposed by Donald Trump. Chief Economic Minister Erlangga Hartarto stated the country's intention to engage in diplomacy and negotiations to reach mutually beneficial solutions, opting not to retaliate against the tariff. French President Emmanuel Macron is currently in Egypt, seeking to use strong bilateral relations to foster a ceasefire in the Middle East, even as activists pressure him to address human rights concerns in Cairo. Turning to the United States, Secretary of State Rubio has softened his stance towards NATO allies regarding tariff disputes, stressing the critical importance of Ukraine's future and European security for the alliance. Then, the 7 foreign ministers united in condemning China's provocative and destabilizing military exercises surrounding Taiwan. Malaysia's Prime Minister Anwar has pledged to spearhead an ASEAN challenge to what he describes as Trump's tariff wall, indicating that he has already engaged in discussions with his counterparts in Vietnam and Indonesia to formulate a unified response. Venezuela has accused the United States of orchestrating a false flag attack on an oil platform belonging to Guyana, alleging the involvement of Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Blackwater founder Eric Prince in the purported scheme. The ongoing war in Sudan is driving an exodus of Sudanese refugees into Chad, amid a backdrop of deadly airstrikes as the civil war enters its third year, also impacting South Sudan and exacerbating existing crises. In Morocco, mass demonstrations against Israel's war in Gaza and the United States' support for it have taken place in Rabat. The question of whose lives are deemed worthy of protection is exposing deep fractures as the West and global South clash over issues surrounding Gaza and beyond. In Europe, Greece has unveiled plans for a drastic defense modernization, earmarking an additional €25 billion to upgrade its military capabilities, adding to their current defense spending, which stands at 3% of GDP. Spain is witnessing widespread protests across the country as tens of thousands of people express their discontent over the nationwide housing crisis, with renters struggling to afford housing amidst a booming property market. Firefighters in Northern Ireland are battling a substantial fire that engulfed forest land in the southeastern part of the province overnight. The Slovakian government has declared a state of emergency for a large portion of the country and has authorized the culling of hundreds of bears following a fatal mauling incident. Moving to Russia, a court has ordered a citizen Joseph Tater, arrested in August for allegedly assaulting a police officer at a Moscow hotel, to undergo psychiatric evaluation at a hospital while awaiting his trial. In Africa, the Democratic Republic of Congo is grappling with severe flooding in Kinshasa, resulting in numerous fatalities and widespread destruction of homes after the Njili River breached its banks, isolating more than half of the city. Mali has mourned the passing of Amadou Bagayoko, one half of the acclaimed musical duo Amadou and Mariam, who died at the age of 70 in his hometown of Bamako. The Grammy-nominated guitarist was widely celebrated for his contributions to music. In the Asia-Pacific region, Fiji triumphed in the men's title at the World Sevens Series in Singapore, defeating Kenya 21-12 and securing second place in the overall standing. Japan is seeing innovative community engagement in Kawara, Fukuoka Prefecture, where trading cards featuring real people are fostering connections between children and adults, encouraging children to participate in community activity. Finally, the cattle crossbreeding agreement between Beijing and Vientiane serves as an example of economic cooperation with the potential to benefit the entire region. And that's a wrap for today's news, because even headlines need a nap. Stay curious, stay kind, and let the noise fade as you find your quiet. Take care, stay awesome, and I'll see you next time on WHAM Today.